The story of Days Gone is certainly an interesting one, to me at least. Now, I'm not talking about the game's story, we'll get into that a little bit later, but rather Days Gone as a product, and some of the strange things that have transpired since its release. There definitely was some hype for this game, not surprising considering Sony's reputation regarding its first party exclusives. However, critical reception at launch wasn't the most favorable, citing things such as bugs, uneven story pacing, some undercooked gameplay mechanics, even being referred to as painfully generic by some, ultimately landing it in that ratings wasteland known as the 7 out of 10 game, which I've said before might as well mean 0 out of 10 for some unknown reason. Normally, I don't pay too much attention to what critics have to say, but I have to admit, I was looking forward to this game, but disregarded it based on these middling reviews. Open world games are generally a pretty significant time investment. I don't want to waste all those hours on something that is just considered bleh. I would have expected others to do the same, but that's where things start to get interesting. Even though critical reception was lukewarm at best, apparently this game sold well. Some of those lower review scores from major outlets ended up receiving a hearty backlash from the fans. Despite this apparent commercial success and strong fan reception, Sony still considers Days Gone a disappointment. They've shot down a proposal for a sequel, yet, ironically, have greenlit a film. You mean to tell me that this game was such a disappointment that they didn't want to bother making another one, yet somehow successful enough for them to want to spend a bunch of cash to make a movie about it? This is some S-tier nonsense right here, but what do I know? I'm not some bigwig executive in a $5,000 suit at the head of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Maybe they know something I don't. There's just something off about this to me. Regardless, Sony's decision to turn down this sequel caused its own unique set of drama, and it's so much fun. There's developers that have apparently left Bend Studios over this. A silly Twitter beef involving Sucker Punch when they posted Ghost of Tsushima's sales and how one game was considered such a disappointment while the other one was a success, even though both games' sales figures seem pretty comparable. The fans have even started a petition trying to get this sequel to happen. All this mess over numbers. Not sales numbers, it would seem, but rather Metacritic scores. Days Gone's critic meta simply isn't up to par with what Sony's accustomed to from its first-party exclusives. I think this is what influenced them to kill the sequel and consider this whole thing a disappointment. However, that is not how fans see it. This is what ultimately caused me to want to check this game out. I've always found that dynamic between critics and fans to be pretty fascinating. Whether it's the critical darling that wasn't as well received by the fans, The Last of Us Part 2, Elden Ring now that I think about it, or something on the other end of the spectrum, Days Gone. There's clearly two stories being told here. What did one side see that the other didn't? Days Gone's critic meta may say that it's an okay game, but the user score is actually higher than Ghost of Tsushima's critic meta. While one may have caused me to disregard it, the other one makes me want to play it. And now that I finally have, I know exactly what side I'm on. And this is where things get a little complicated, because I can actually understand all the complaints that were levied against this game by the critics. Yet, each one of them does come with a big fat but. Let's start with the bugs. Were there some? Yeah, I encountered a thing here and there, and this was years after release when they likely patched out most of them, like it tends to happen with games nowadays. Though I'm fairly confident, at launch, reviewers probably encountered quite a few more than I did. But nothing I came across was ever remotely game breaking in any way whatsoever. There were a few times where I couldn't interact with an NPC I'd just saved. This never actually happened during a story sequence. It was always some random encounter as I'm traversing the game world. The game never froze on me. I never had to revert to an old save file because of some reason. Everything was smooth. The few things I did notice were little random nothings. Character models that would act funny, clipping through wall textures, silly stuff like this. Things many other games have launched with in the past that reviewers have glossed over. Certainly nothing I experienced would have affected my review score. At launch, things could have been much worse and did affect theirs. The game ran pretty smoothly for me overall. I didn't have any issues with frame rate drops, the controls were responsive, the buttons did what they were supposed to when you pressed them. I was fine. I did hear a few mentions here and there of some underdeveloped gameplay mechanics. I can't say I agree with this at all. Okay, maybe the mandatory stealth sequences. AI in this game is nowhere near sophisticated enough to make stealth interesting. But there weren't very many of these missions, and they never lasted very long anyway, so this was never much of an issue for me. The combat itself, though, is pretty solid. Melee is visceral and satisfying, guns have a nice kick to them, there's a good selection of different items or weapons you can unlock, things to help you take out a horde more easily, or at least distract them. A bunch of different guns, ranging from the old-fashioned hunting rifle, bullet-spewing submachine guns, big, beefy assault rifles, all sorts of different shotguns and pistols, each one with their own unique feel, so it doesn't seem like all you're doing is just finding a better version of something you already have. The weapons you choose actually do make a bit of a difference on how you approach a combat encounter. You don't have your sniper rifle? That lookout in the tower is going to be such a headache as you're trying to wipe out an ambush camp. A bit short on Molotovs or attractor bombs, seeing a horde in the middle of the night goes from fight to flight in an instant, because you just know you're not going to survive this. The only real complaint I have here is with the two-tiered weapon wheel. This thing is so finicky. There were times where I'm just trying to pick an item, and it would switch off to another one at the last second because I shifted my thumb by a millimeter. It never was anything that got me killed or something like that, but it would happen constantly and annoyed me the entire time I played the game. Other than this one complaint, Days Gone does play very well. Tight combat controls, riding around on your bike is smooth right from the beginning and only gets smoother with each upgrade. It does start with this teeny tiny little gas tank that feels like it needs to be refilled every couple hundred yards. It's a complete nuisance, especially when you just want to cruise around or get to your next destination, but no, you've got to make a quick pit stop to top her off. Luckily, gas isn't consumed during story missions. This is great. You will get to upgrade this gas tank as you play through the game, so this does become less of an issue the more you play. By the end of it, you can go from one end of this open world to the other without having to worry at all about gas. And ho boy, is Days Gone an open world game. It is probably the most open world game to have ever open worlded. In the history of the open world game genre, painfully generic does not begin to describe it. It is an overstuffed smorgasbord of open world game tropes. You've got your resource gathering, the crafting, pointless collectibles scattered through the game world, character upgrades, waypoint markers, the little GPS map in the corner of the screen that you end up staring at more than the actual environments. Cover shooting, slow-mo aiming, hiding in bushes, complete with the distraction throwing rocks, of course. Enemy camps you have to clear, friendly camps that give you different side quests or sell you new gear, tracking missions using that ridiculous tracker vision mode that highlights things in the environment that weren't previously visible, which makes even less sense in this game. I don't know how many pots Deacon St. John smoked while he was with that biker gang of his, but this thing even lets him see enemies through walls or hallucinate what his targets were up to. There is one significant innovation that Days Gone brings to the table. Instead of having you just climb up some towers to open up chunks of the map like most of these games do, this game has you climbing down into a bunker to do it. I mean, this is groundbreaking stuff here. I'm sure this is going to revolutionize the open world game genre. I mean, seriously. There isn't a single thing that Days Gone does that hasn't already been done by 10 billion other open world games. I mean, these are tropes for a reason, I suppose. They have been proven to work within the genre. My real question here is, does Days Gone's utter lack of originality make it any less entertaining? Open world games are really about the little moments, the random stuff that'll just happen while you're out there. I heard a lot of complaints that this open world is devoid of life and lacking in personality. I don't even know how to respond to this. It is post-apocalyptic rural Oregon. It's not like there's going to be too many NPCs just strutting around all these trees and abandoned farmhouses. Regardless, I found plenty of these moments in this open world. There's lots of those scripted random moments that these games tend to have. There's lots of organic ones too. I'd just be riding around and get ambushed by a bunch of raiders or attacked by a wild animal while I'm picking berries. An assault on a bandit camp will get interrupted by some zombies that'll wipe them out for me. Or I'll get rushed by a horde as I'm just trying to get gas for my bike or something like that. And what about them hordes? Days Gone's big selling point. The one original gimmick this game has going for it. Actually, these things are pretty well implemented into scripted moments as well as organic ones. A couple of them are part of story missions. They reside in their own little playground, if you will. These things are really well designed with explosives and traps laid out all over the place. The rest are just kind of out there in the wild. They sleep in their caves during the day, come out to play at night, just ready to ruin your good time. I don't know how many times I'm just minding my own business when boom, out of nowhere, I've got like 100 of these things coming after me. And all I could do is just panic and run. Later in the game, when you are actually ready to deal with them, trying to take one of these things out is just beautiful and chaotic. These are the things that make for a good open world game. One thing that I found particularly impressive was right at the end of the game, I'd already finished the main mission. I was just wrapping up the last few things I had left. I'm on my way somewhere, and out of nowhere, one of these scripted events happens, and I get ambushed again. But it was something I hadn't seen all game. This was like 90 hours in. It's stuff like this that good open world games are made of. The little moments here and there that keep you engaged when you're just out exploring or on your way to a story mission. The actual story itself, it's a bit of a mess. This is where I have to agree with the critics for the most part. I really enjoyed this game. I would have loved it if the entire video was me just raving how amazing Days Gone is, that the reviewers got it all wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. This would make things so much easier for me. It's just not that simple. Some of these criticisms were pretty spot on. The pacing is all over the place. Some missions are boring ass stealth sequences that only act as exposition dumps. Others, exciting action set pieces. Then there's these times where you drive all the way to your destination, only to watch a 3-minute cutscene and walk away. It's like, hey buddy, how's it going? Not good, man. I'm not doing too great, bro. Oh, okay. Gotta go now. Bye-bye. And that's it. Could they have done something more with this? I don't know, like maybe, hey buddy, how's it going? Not good, bro. Oh, sorry to hear that. Let me help you out with it. And you actually go do something? Nope. Just cutscene, nothing else, on to the next objective marker. There's also these odd redundancies that happen all the time. Deacon St. John will wrap up whatever he was doing, then immediately mumble to himself what he just did, like I wasn't actually there to witness any of it. There's these segments where he talks to his dead wife's makeshift gravestone, just letting her know what's been going on in the game up to this point, as if it's a series recap at the beginning of a new season of some Netflix show. These things don't make any sense. It's all so weird. It almost feels like the developers had all this narrative and all these cutscenes ready to go, but had no idea what to actually do with them. So they just sprinkled them randomly throughout the game in some loose chronological order. It's a shame, because the story really isn't that bad. Just the way they went about it is all sorts of wrong. It's also bloated with too many underdeveloped characters, especially some of the villains, which I found rather interesting. I would have liked to know more about their motivations. The character dialogues were well written and very well acted. This is one aspect of the story where I completely disagree with the reviews. There's this one scene that so many reviews just love to use as the prime example of how terrible this game's dialogue is. Some of you have probably already seen it. It's this one.
Here, you can have this one back. But only if you promise to ride me as much as you ride your bike.
This little beauty right here. Oh boy. It's so stupid. This is bad. It is some supreme cheese. One of the most cringe-worthy bits of dialogue in gaming history. But, and I can't even believe I'm going to do this, I'm actually going to have to defend it for a moment. Just stick with me while I explain myself, okay? There is a bit of context that the reviewers conveniently leave out as they're mocking it. There is a reason why she says this, and you realize the reason she's saying this is to troll her husband-to-be. It doesn't really make it any less stupid sounding, but at least it's deliberately stupid. It's actually kind of clever, It's funny. In its own ironic way, it's a testament to the quality of this game's dialogue. I like it. Come to think of it, there really is a lot I like about this game's world and its story. The way the zombies are depicted as being more like pack animals than just monsters. Deacon himself, while he may have one of the most punchable looking faces in all of gaming, he is an interesting character. There's this contrast between the way he speaks to other survivors and how he mumbles obscenities at the enemies he's gunning down, like he's constantly on the brink of completely losing it. His bromance with his best bud Boozer is one of the best story arcs in the game. Boozer is easily my favorite character. No matter what he's going through, he always manages to add an air of levity to what is otherwise a pretty dreary game. Had the developers trimmed the fat a little bit here and there, this story would have been so much better than it is. There is a lot of potential here for me to think that a sequel could be an amazing game. It just seems like this is never gonna actually happen. I think this is a mistake. Sony really dropped the ball on this one. The Days Gone series could have been yet another IP for them to add to their stellar lineup of exclusive titles. It isn't without its flaws, but I had a lot of fun with it. I am firmly aligned with the fans on this one. I even signed the petition, even though I know it'll likely not amount to anything. I suppose the critics? They decided to focus more on those flaws than the actual fun. And while it's only speculation on my part, it seems Sony focused more on the critics than the actual fans. Or maybe this game just didn't sell as well as what those disgruntled ex-employees claimed it did. Who knows? Either way, there is a lot to like here. Take it from old Zosnaral. Give this game a shot. Don't sleep on it like I did just because of these middle-of-the-road reviews. Days Gone is a lot better than what the critics claim it is. I'm just hoping that one day it gets that sequel that it rightfully deserves.